Hello everybody, Nicholas Snow here with PromoHomo.tv, and I'm at Palm Springs City Hall coming to you live. And this is going to be a fascinating panel about creating and fostering transgender equality. And I'm going to bring it all to you, and I encourage you to share the video. This event is closely associated with Equality California, and they have a project called Transform California, which we're going to be learning more about as well.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. I'm really glad you all came out tonight for Transforming the Desert, panel discussion on issues impacting the transgender and gender non-conforming community here in the Coachella Valley. I'm Jeff Kors. I'm sort of playing several roles. One, I'm going to facilitate the conversation. I also serve as Government Policy Director for the National Center for Lesbian Rights, where I'm on the Executive Committee of Transform California, which is a statewide public education project. And I'm also a member of the Palm Springs City Council, so I'll have some input in the conversation on both of those. I really want to thank what's really a tremendous group of people who've agreed to participate today. And I'm going to do some brief introductions. First is Lisa Middleton. I think I know all of this, I don't need to read it, but I think most people here know Lisa as a neighborhood activist. She's a member of the Palm Springs Planning Commission, and she's chair of 1PS, a coalition of 43 neighborhood organizations here in Palm Springs. She's a 2016 Victory Fund Fellow and a member of the board of directors of Neighborhoods USA, Equality California, the LGBT Center of the Desert, and the Desert Horticultural Society, which is the most important role, I think. And she's been proudly out as transgender for over 20 years. Sitting next to Lisa is Tommy Clinton. Tommy began working in human rights issues in 1988 in kindergarten, and has advocated for full LGBT equality since that time. Tommy serves as the Chief Executive Officer of the Transgender Community Coalition in Palm Springs, which advocates for open access to healthcare, housing, and employment for transgender, intersex, and gender nonconforming people throughout the Coachella Valley. Tommy also serves on the Harvey Milk Diversity Breakfast Committee. She serves on the Cathedral City LGBT Pride Committee, the Transgender Day of Remembrance Vigil Committee, and Trans Pride Committee. Tommy also serves on Congressman Ruiz's LGBT Outreach Committee and the Riverside Transgender Coalition. Okay. Next to Tommy is Deacon Noah Seaton, who's been in the Universal Fellowship of the Metropolitan Community Churches since 1972. MCC was founded in 1968, pre-Stonewall, and has been just an amazing part of our community and a place where people have been free to worship as who they are for a very long time. Deacon Noah has been a deacon now for 15 years, in the last 5 here in the Coachella Valley, and he's been an out transgender man for the past 18 years. So thank you for being with us. Aiden Stockton, who's next to us, graduated high school in Yucca Valley last year, and if folks were at the Harvey Milk Breakfast probably 2 years ago, he just gave a really moving talk about coming out as transgender, and his mom was there as well. He started telling friends he was transgender in 8th grade, and came out in 9th grade. first to classmates and then to his family, because family is always a little harder, as many of us know. And now works in the produce section of the grocery store, and he's set to become a manager in the next 2 years. So thank you so much. I've heard you speak before. I'm really thrilled to have you with us.
Thank you.
So next is our police chief, Brian Reyes. So Chief Reyes began his career in law enforcement in 1991, and after 2 years in Compton, moved to Palm Springs, where he's been the rest of his career. In 2000, his peers selected him as Officer of the Year, and he's received numerous accolades and awards, way too long to list in a short introduction. He's held the ranks of officer, detective, sergeant, lieutenant, and captain, and he was appointed chief of police in Palm Springs on February 10th, 2016. Since becoming a police officer, Chief Reyes has earned his AA Administration of Justice, a BA in Criminal Justice, and a Master of Public Administration from Cal State San Bernardino. A lot of free time there. And in 2012, graduate of the LAPD West Point Leadership Program. Chief Reyes is an active community member, a resident of our community, and is a board member for the Palm Springs Boys and Girls Club. So thank you for being with us, Chief. And sitting at the end is Carolyn Caldwell, who has served as President and Chief Executive Officer of Desert Regional Medical Center since 2012. She also serves on the American Hospital Association's Board of Trustees, the governing and policy-making body of the AHA. Prior to arriving in California, she served on the executive team of 3 hospitals in Missouri and Texas. Carolyn earned her bachelor's degree in zoology and chemistry and a master's degree in healthcare administration. In addition, Carolyn serves as the board president of Palm Springs Chamber of Commerce, so she's sort of wearing 2 hats tonight to talk both about healthcare and about employment as it impacts the transgender and gender non-conforming community. So, thank you all for being here, and really excited to hear what everyone has to say on a whole bunch of issues. And the idea of this panel was really to do 2 things. One was to provide some education from transgender leaders and transgender individuals in our community, to talk about their lives, their experiences, and to share them with everyone here. The other was to talk about how our community works to both protect and empower the transgender community, to talk about healthcare and employment issues, to talk about what Palm Springs Police Department does to make sure transgender people are empowered and safe, and to talk about some of our local laws as well as state laws. And I think given a lot of the understandable concern from the election of Donald Trump and Mike Pence in the community, I think it's really important also to highlight the many protections we have here in the Coachella Valley in the state of California for transgender people, and for people to know that those rights, exist and, can't be taken away with a stroke of a pen. And I think as you read a lot of things, there's a lot of fear and a lot of reason for fear, but there's also a lot of reason to be, optimistic, especially for people who live here in the Coachella Valley in California. So with that, we're going to start with some questions. And the first is really, how can community leaders take action to create an open and welcoming environment for transgender and gender non-conforming residents and visitors? And also, what are we doing here in Palm Springs in the Valley? And so let me start with that, Lisa. If you could talk a little bit, share your thoughts on that.
I don't think an open and welcoming community appears magically. It takes time, and it has to become a part of the culture of a city and a community. When you look historically at Palm Springs, we have had decades in which we were identified as a very welcoming community for lots of individuals, and also times when our history is far less something to be emulated. But in the last 15, 20 years, Palm Springs has established itself as a place where, in particular, LGBT and progressive individuals feel comfortable, feel welcomed. And what we're seeing is people from around the country, like my wife and I, moved to Palm Springs specifically because we knew this was a community in which we would find individuals like ourselves and find an open opportunity to be a part of the community.
Great, thank you. Deacon, can you talk a little bit about what faith leaders really can do to make sure people feel welcome and included?
We have always been an open and welcoming community at our church, and the churches all over the world. We are the largest and fastest growing LGBT organization in the world. We have 300 churches in different countries, and we always say that you're always welcome. Welcome home is the term that we use. Sometimes when people walk through the door and they look scared and frightened, they're oftentimes broken. They're oftentimes in deep pain from family issues, from job issues, from relationship issues. And we try to provide a very safe and loving and caring community in the way that we believe Jesus did in his day. We are opening, welcoming. We are a universal fellowship, so there's a little bit of everybody's church in our worship space. You know, we have Blessing of the Animals Day, St. Francis. We have wonderful and welcoming Easter services and Christmas services, and we will have a Thanksgiving service on Thanksgiving morning, and a fellowship of food and laughter afterwards. And I think it's important that many people in the LGBT community have always been beaten up by churches, by religious leaders all over the world. And I often am asked, what makes you think that you are God's beloved? Well, two reasons. God doesn't make junk, and God doesn't have stepchildren. Who made all of you out there also made me. And I believe that the transgender community, and this is only my belief, my pastor's not with this idea, but my belief is that looking back on the Stonewall rebellion, God raised up those people, and the trans community was in that crowd. Trans women were the ones who kicked the police officers in the chest, all due respect, sir, and climbed out of the paddy wagons. They sent 2 officers to quell this riot, and the riot went on for a whole week. I believe God raised up those people to do that and gave them the courage to do that. I believe strongly that God has called the trans community to be the bridge between the straight and GLB people, to understand God loves us all. This is my last warning, get it right. It's all about the love.
Thank you. Carolyn, one is CEO of one of our large employers and board chair of the chamber. What can employers and businesses do? So, one, to make sure that transgender people, we'll start with that, feel welcome in businesses and really do that kind of, outreach.
Well, I think the first thing that businesses can do is to be honest with themselves as far as making sure that everyone feels welcome within their organization. And so first I'll talk about Desert Regional as a hospital and some of the things that we wanted to do. In some of our public areas, there's been this big debate about bathrooms, and so we made our bathrooms gender neutral, so that was more welcoming for everyone. And also being a member of the Healthcare Equality Index, there's a certain amount of training that goes along with that. But in my role as president of the Palm Springs Chamber this year, I was so excited to be asked to be a part of this panel. And so I had a meeting with Norma Watson, who's our CEO, and Steve Hinkie, who I think several of you may know, who is the incoming president of the chamber, to get their ideals about what should we be doing as a chamber around this topic. And one of the things that we're focusing on is making sure that businesses are strong, because our city and our community, we're only as strong as our businesses. And what we want to do is sit down with our friends in the transgender community and find out, what are their needs? Because we have a lot of businesses that tell us that they have a lot of needs for employees. And so we see ourselves as being able to pull the groups together and create some type of avenue where we can present individuals who are looking for employment to several of our businesses in the community that come to us and tell us they can't find people, for certain jobs in the area.
Okay, great. Thank you. Tommy, I wasn't slated to ask you this, but now is a sort of good time. Just following up on that, and I know you do a lot of work with transgender people, jobs. So what are the challenges that are faced, but also you've had a lot of success. So what has led to that success? What can folks do to help replicate the success you've had getting transgender people jobs?
Well, I think Mary Moon says I'm grumpy. When I first moved here, actually, I was going to MCC. That's how I actually found a place to be safe where I could transition and start transitioning and go further in my transition because I'm from Arkansas. It's not really acceptable there. And so I noticed there was a lot of trans people living in their cars, a lot of trans people sex work in domestic violence situations because if they didn't have that they would just be out on the streets. And would be fired or harassed or picked on by a wide variety of people. And I pretty much stayed to myself until later on when things changed here and I started coming out and started helping. And I would say that the biggest thing in our success is I often reach out to a variety of people and it often clicks with me. And I'm like, I got someone for you. And we usually work with them, and we have to find out their skill set. I would say that's probably the hardest thing here, is that when people don't understand that trans people, when they transition, a lot of times they start doing it and they are not able to get their diploma, or they are not able to further certain skill sets and to get that service, or they have not transitioned to a point where some employers are comfortable. So finding them the position in which they can be successful and to flourish and give them opportunity. There's very few that I've ever met that you haven't given an opportunity to that don't just flourish with it. But we've been really successful here as far as getting them jobs. I would say there's probably about 5 or 6 left that we're not working, some of them don't want to work. And as far as housing, we're really low on the housing, like 2 or 3. So to the point that Washington has contacted me a few times, asking how are you doing this, and I don't know, I just do it. But I think that's the biggest thing is that you learn them, you learn their skill set, and then you apply it to the people that you know. And it's that additional steps that I think are required. And businesses here need to educate themselves in finding understanding, using the simple things as proper pronouns. And a lot of people don't understand. There's a lot of because trans people are non-binary, so we don't really fit into the binary world. So it's more difficult for us. And so understanding those legal parameters and those procedural hurdles, and the Valley is very progressive as being affirming. We just got hired at the airport. So I think that those are the important things, and I think it's important that businesses have conversations with one another about it. And we do training for businesses and for clinics and all sorts of facilities. We go in, we do training, we do discussions, group discussions. We go in, we look at the policies. How can we change this? How can we do these things and make it more inclusive? And as I was just talking with the beautiful lady in the front row there, she was telling me, you give these people opportunity, they get pride, they have a sense of dignity and respect, and they're able to flourish with just what is supposed to be given to everyone else, which is life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's what everybody wants, really.
Thank you. Let me just move to Aiden here. You obviously came out as transgender in 8th and 9th grade. Not right here in Palm Springs, but in the high desert.
Yeah.
And so just your experience with your peers, with school, with the GSA, can you just sort of share that? Because I think it's really important that people know what difference it makes when there is that kind of support in schools.
Yeah, definitely it made a big difference having the support that I had, because I feel like if I didn't have the GSA that was given to me and the opportunities I did have at Yucca Valley, I probably would have felt more scared, like uncomfortable. I was probably one of the first trans people at Yucca Valley that went to Miss J, the leader of the GSAs, and said, hey, you know, this is how I'm feeling, can you help me out? Basically, you know. And what happened was, before I came out to teachers, Miss J, you know, GSA people, it was more of my class, and it was more so little hints like, oh, you know, I want a different name, or, you know, I would explain I feel more masculine, I'm uncomfortable in the situations. In junior high, the dressing room, they wouldn't even let me dress out in the bathroom. I was completely uncomfortable, you know, and I started talking to my principals about that, my teachers. I didn't know really what it was called at the time, so how could I have anybody else justify my feelings to help me better myself back then? And I went through a lot of bad times shifting from junior high to my high school, you know, because I was sent to hospitals and everything, Loma Linda Behavioral Medicine Center, because of depression, bipolar, and everything, when really I was just a boy. And we had a lot of issues with that, with my family and stuff. But I came out at my school first, and my friends were like, oh yeah, you know, it took me a while, you know, Aiden, and then Victoria, I told you to call me Aiden. Well, I called you Aiden 6 times and you didn't answer. So it was a really hard shift, you know, for myself too, to be like, wow, you know, I'm okay with this. I feel I'm a lot happier. And my classmates definitely helped me. My teachers, they were kind of, you know, whatever, okay, we'll do it, you know. And that happened. What happened was, I wrote a letter to my mom that I wanted to give to her, but I stayed with my cousins at the time. And I was talking to my cousins about it, you know, this is how I'm feeling. I don't know if I should bring it up to my mom, you know, because before I was transgender, obviously I was gay, I was a lesbian, and I had a hard time coming out to my mom as that. And she was totally accepting, and I kind of just texted her about it, because I didn't want to do it face to face, it's too hard. And I texted her and she just said, okay. And she started looking for a therapist right there and then, and completely helped me get to where I am right now. And another thing I wanted to mention was the jobs that Tony was talking about. She actually helped me get my job that I have at Food for Less, with the resumes and everything.
Great, thank you so much.
May I add something?
Yeah, please.
He left out a very important part about his wrestling career.
Oh yeah.
While he was in high school, he was the first trans man on the wrestling team, and he whooped butt.
And actually, the bathroom, AB 1266, actually, I helped to get a pass at Yucca Valley High School, with the help of Alexis Unger, too.
Terrific. And for folks who don't know, AB 1266 is a California law that requires that all public schools allow students to participate in all programs and use facilities consistent with their gender identity. And it's sort of a good segue into sort of some of the protections we have and what we can do on a local level. Because, you know, one of the concerns is that the Trump administration will repeal guidance and executive orders on a whole bunch of issues. And when it comes to the transgender community, the two main concerns are the guidance on students in public schools being able to use facilities consistent with their gender identity and participate in programs, and the executive order that prohibits discrimination for federal contractors based on sexual orientation and gender identity. So I just want 2 things on that. One is on the student policy. In that policy, we believe was already the law, right? That policy was just interpreting and making it clear to schools that if they don't enforce Title IX, which prohibits discrimination based on gender, they're going to lose federal funding. So even without that guidance, you know, we will argue that's the law, and legal groups will make that case. For students here in California, the federal issue is not as important because we have our own legislation that requires students to be able to use facilities based on their gender identity. and participate in programs regardless of what happens. But of course, we're very concerned about what happens in other states. And we're fortunate to live in a state that has those protections. The other thing I also want to just touch on briefly is, one of the questions I was asked to talk about is what can we do on the local level? What can elected leaders do on the local level? And I think there are things we can do. California signed into law, Governor Brown, which will go into effect next year, that all single occupancy bathrooms have to be gender neutral. Cathedral City and Palm Springs have already done that. But having other cities in Coachella Valley pass laws like that to help do the public education that comes with it is really important. Earlier this year, Palm Springs, passed a law that requires any entity that gets government funding, so any government contractor, has to give equal benefits, including transgender health care, if benefits are offered to non-transgender people. And that's something that cities and states, California does it, it's the only state can do, to at least alleviate, in some places, the negative consequences of if the executive order is withdrawn by the Obama administration. And we have very strong employment protections here in California. So while there's reason for concern, I also don't want people to quite have the level of fear they do. I think the real risk that we're facing when it comes to these issues is the religious freedom law that Governor Pence did in Indiana and that's being advocated at the federal level, and Trump said he would sign. Because that would basically give any business, any individual, any government employee the right to ignore non-discrimination laws if they claim it's based on their religious beliefs. And that is the one issue that I think we have to be especially vigilant about, because if that were to pass and get signed into law, so many of our gains would basically become meaningless. So that is a real concern we have, and something I think at the local level we need to really be speaking out on, and I think we need to get cities to take action on and make sure our voice is heard, that we don't allow that kind of backwards movement to happen. So with that, let's move to something positive. So Chief Reyes, I think there's obviously a history from Stonewall and before, and even in other cities today where transgender and gender nonconforming individuals don't feel they're treated respectfully by police departments. And it's one of the reasons we're very fortunate to live in Palm Springs with you as chief and the police department we have. And I think it would be really helpful for folks to know the steps that you and the department have taken to make sure that transgender and gender nonconforming people feel welcomed and safe in Palm Springs.
When I took over as chief, I thought it was very important to make sure that I, as a leader of our police department, was accessible to everybody in the community. Early on, as a matter of fact, within the first 2 weeks of being appointed chief, I, along with members of my command staff, non-sworn staff all the way to line level, attended a Cornerstone Society fundraising event in Palm Springs, where we were able to hear firsthand from David Mixner, who, as many know, is over 50 years at the forefront of LGBT equality movement. And that kind of set the tone from the onset in regards to our involvement. We have an LGBT outreach committee in our police department. They meet monthly. They discuss the issues that are going on locally, nationally, or in upcoming legislation. There was a need for a town hall meeting, so to speak, in regards to the George Zander crime investigation. I made myself available to the community to answer questions and address the issue. And there's further town hall meetings in the planning stages now. I have 11 members on my LGBT outreach committee, in which I'm going to be sending all of them to the Museum of Tolerance in LA, just to get that much more education. I changed my field training program. We have a field training program for all new officers that's 16 weeks long. That's in the field. I put 3 weeks on the front end of that that's strictly in-house, where they learn about our policies, our procedures, our 43 organized neighborhoods, our LGBT outreach efforts, my police advisory board efforts. But one key thing that I'm very proud to announce is that I've been working with Candace Nichols. Me, as well as several of my managers, met with Candace Nichols, who's the director of programs at the LGBT Center. I just recently had a grand opening. To sit down with her and develop a 2-hour block of instruction, where she's going to help out create a 2-hour block of instruction on all current trends with LGBT, and just so our officers are better educated, and they're going to actually go to the center and get taught by members of the LGBT center.
Terrific. That's great. Thank you. You have something to say?
Yeah. You know, it is always leadership at the top that makes a difference. And Chief Reyes, in his very first public outreach meeting, met with members of the LGBT community at a gay bar. And he did that within the first 2 weeks of assuming office. We knew immediately we had a friend.
Great. Thank you. And Chief, you sort of mentioned the hate crime that Georgia Chryssander experienced here in Palm Springs. And I think we're seeing a rise in hate crimes right now, not just for the LGBT community, for a lot of minorities. And, so what can sort of the community do to make sure that people are safer in this sort of hopefully short-term but currently challenging environment we're in?
The Palm Springs Police Department has these hate crime wallet cards available at the police department. We'll probably put this online and make it accessible. But it basically lays out what you should do should you be a victim of a hate crime. Don't assume that the elements of the crime are not met. Let us determine if the elements of the crime are met, or if they're not, we at a minimum document it as an incident report. Because it's important for the police department of Palm Springs to knock down the hate at the lowest levels. So don't let it build up until you think you have definite crime, because all those other issues that happened prior, as far as the arguments and the hate speech, we document all those things in an incident report, because should you become a victim of a crime down the road, all those becomes factors and brought into the court as far as the history of these people that want to hate.
Great. Thank you. Let's move over to healthcare a little bit. So Tommy and Carolyn, Tommy, you're now working in the field, and you talked a little bit about some of the unique issues that transgender people face when interacting with healthcare and on healthcare issues in general.
Well, my secondary job is with Borrego Healthcare Foundation. So I work in operations for the Borrego Healthcare, and one of my roles is training staff and making sure that there's up training and making sure that there are services and referrals and things like that. Prior to that, I worked from home, and I worked, with Desert AIDS Project, Desert Regional. The two of their people from Desert Regional are on our board, Eisenhower and Borrego. And, I really worked for each of them to reach out to the transgender community and create these programs. One of those reasons is because of capitalism. So the more you have providing those services, the better quality services you get. And like any other trans person, we should be able to choose where we want to go. Now that's the only place to go, which allows trans people to receive healthcare services. In the past, most of the trans people had either private insurance, but if they were low income, they were having to go over the border and get their medications and self-medicate, or they would go to Los Angeles and get them, or they would buy them illegally. And in doing the way that Transgender Community Coalition has been working on it, now they're able to choose if they want to go to a certain place, if they like their doctor. If they don't, they go to another doctor, which is just like anybody else, and which is great. The challenge that we have right now is that Medicare, Medi-Cal, and IHP are not competent networks. And I hope I don't get a tomato thrown at me for saying that, but it's the problem is that there are certain healthcare requirements for trans people, and they do not have the contracts with the proper doctors or enough providers to provide those services. As an example, you have a trans woman who has a vaginoplasty, which means she's had the gender reassignment surgery. What gynecologist is she going to go to if she's on Medi-Cal? Who's going to do the gauging for the vaginoplasty? Trans men. Who's going to do the gynecology? or the mammogram. So that is the biggest challenge, is that when you have someone come in that looks like ZZ Top that has a vagina, it's uncomfortable for the provider, and for one, and unless they're properly trained and they're comfortable in their own skin. And then two, it is the insurance providers is really what's binding the doctor's hands here to improving the quality of service. And that's what I see on the frustration on the trans level. And we have quite a few on our mailing list and things like that, is that they get a service approved by their doctor as medically necessary, but then they can't find anywhere to go except San Francisco, because Medi-Cal, IHP, Medicare have not contracted with the proper people in this area to start that navigation network.
Thank you. Carolyn, can you sort of talk about what Desert Regional does and how sort of folks you work with are trained and work with the transgender community?
Absolutely, thank you. And we are very fortunate at Desert Regional, because we always want to make sure that we provide care that is culturally sensitive to everyone. And I think Lisa, you said it best, it really starts at the top. And I think as leaders, we have to create an environment where our employees feel like they're empowered to reach out into the community and do things that serve our entire community. So when I was approached by two of my young leaders that wanted to work with the Transgender Community Coalition, I was very happy to see their excitement and some things that we needed to learn. And even though we as an organization felt like we were culturally sensitive and that we were doing all the right things, we found ourselves in a situation where we had someone present to our facility, and when people are coming into the facility, or what we call intake, they come in with their driver's license, and your driver's license usually will have your birth name if you haven't gone through the process. And as Tommy said, you know, you have someone whose name in a driver's license may be a male name, but they look female. And this individual felt really humiliated because the intake person kept referring to them as their name on their driver's license. Now, I was happy when they received care. They said that the nurses and the physicians were wonderful. They were culturally sensitive. They know how to take care of them. But because we were so disturbed by this, we reached out to Tommy, and she came out and did extensive training for our intake staff, for some of our nurses and physicians. And then we took it a step further, and we trained our entire leadership team. So that we would know how to make sure that we are providing care that's culturally sensitive, and that our employees understood. Because we have to be sure as well that if we say as an organization that we're going to be open, we're going to embrace, we're going to try to recruit physicians that know how to deal with people in the trans community, that our employees have also been equipped with the proper training so that they know how to provide care that's culturally sensitive as well. And so we were very fortunate to have resources in the community like Tommy and the Transgender Community Coalition, because we knew immediately who to reach out to, and I think she was there the next week working with her team.
And they bought me flowers.
Always good to do it. I just want to follow up one thing on this, because one of the concerns I've heard a lot in the last couple of days is people's concerns about losing health insurance if the Affordable Care Act is repealed. And obviously that can have a big impact on the transgender community, because there are protections against discrimination in that law, as well as for the LGBT community. For folks in California, obviously losing the insurance is a big concern, but I do want folks to know that California does already require that every insurance policy issued in the state has to provide services for transgender people if they provide them for anyone else. And that was passed back in 2005, and is something that both the Department of Managed Care and the Insurance Commissioner will follow up on if people do find that they're not being provided with hormone treatment or gender reassignment surgery, because most of those procedures sometimes are provided in other instances for people with different situations. So it's really important that we stay on top of that, and I think the kind of, as Tommy knows, reaching out to the legal organizations when that's happened, and so we'll advocate for folks, but it's important for the community to know that people can't be denied coverage simply based on their gender identity. And while again, this may be a big problem in the rest of the country, and I think Tommy's points about having medically trained people is really important, especially if more people end up back on Medi-Cal because they no longer will have insurance, and that is what will happen in California. It's something we really have to pay attention to, so I appreciate that. I want to move to one more subject and then open it up for questions from everyone here. Well, not everyone, hopefully, but from folks who have questions. But I want to talk a little bit, and both the Deacon and Lisa, if you could comment on this. You know, you're both out trans people in not necessarily, you know, trans or LGBT sort of advocacy roles, right? Deacon, you work obviously in the faith community. So how, obviously, just people being out and sharing their stories, as we've seen in other issues, changes hearts and minds, and it's so important. And obviously, you both do that in your other work. But how do you think we can work with allies? You know, it's familiarity, it's getting to know people makes a difference. But how can we sort of reach out and do that education to people who might not yet be as supportive of transgender people as they could be? So, you know, how can you do that in your work?
That's a good question. Because I'm a trans man, I'm invisible. I spent 43 years as a lesbian being invisible. It is a difficult place for me, and I only realized this last year when I marched with the Trans Coalition in the Pride March. I had my collar on. I was so proud, and I realized halfway down the street that nobody really knew that I was a trans man. They just figured I was a padre who understood. How do we reach out, especially in the religious sector, to people who are wounded badly by their parents' churches, by the churches they grew up in? My very best friend growing up was an organist in his father's church. His father was a pastor, and his father was away on vacation one Sunday, and the congregation took it upon themselves to throw this young man out. And because he was gay, and everyone knew it. And someone pointed their finger at him and said, "You are going to hell." And the only thing he could think of in the moment of distress and stress that he was in was saying, "No, I'm not. Because that's where you're going, and that's not where I want to be." To tell people that we are loved, that we can be loved in our situations. I grew up GLBT. I knew when I was 6 years old that I was trans. I was in the wrong body. And my great aunt and uncle asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I said, I want to be a boy, and they laughed. And I knew in that moment I could not be who I wanted to be. It comes from education. It comes from a place of love. That we all have to learn how to love one another. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, we have learned to fly like the birds in the sky. We've learned to swim like fish in the sea, but we have yet to learn how to be siblings on earth. It behooves all of us to welcome those who are different from us. And I think that that's how we can heal all of this hatred. And I'm not speaking about just in the GLBT community that's hated from the outside, but divisions between diversity and people who are outcasts. You pass by them sometimes during the day, the homeless, the disheveled, the forgotten. They are tests for each one of us. If you cannot give them $1 in your right consciousness, ask them their name. They are human beings. It all begins with us. It all begins reaching out and saying, I love you, you're my sibling. It doesn't hurt you to say, I love you, but it hurts you to hate, because hate turns on itself. So reaching out to the community, I'm going to say, my church, you're welcome. You don't have to be GLBT. Ask my girlfriend, she's straight. She came to church because her brother is the other deacon. And we met. We weren't looking for each other, but we met. There's room for all of us at the table. There has to be.
So Lisa, sort of.
It's hard to follow the deacon.
I was going to say, sorry about that. There it goes.
And I find myself slightly envious when you are a 5'11", somewhat overweight woman. Invisibility is not an option. But I got my start in this city on neighborhood issues. And those issues had to do with the quality of our streets, with vacation rentals, with the timeliness of response to police and fire issues. Gender really didn't have a whole lot to do with that. But I was very fortunate to be in a city such as Palm Springs, where I was defined by the things I could do and what I could bring to a meeting and how well we could get things done that had nothing to do with gender issues. And so from time to time, when I've needed to speak up on something that was gender related, there was a level of credibility that had been established through work on other things that allowed me to have an impact and to make known that our community is as broad and as talented as any community. And I certainly would only dream to be in his shadow. But for the last 8 years, we have had a president who was the first African American president in this country. And the vast majority of the time, he has been a president for everyone on issues that had nothing to do with race. But on those few occasions when he's needed to speak about race, we have heard someone eloquently describe his experience. And I think that's the kind of opportunity that all of us want, is to contribute broadly, and then when it comes down to the personal, to be able to have the credibility to speak up.
Thank you. The last comment from up here before we open it up, Aiden. If you just talk a little bit about just how important, or not important, whatever it is, but the allies have been for you, whether it's friends, your family, and how non-transgender people can help be supportive, and how that's impacted you.
Support is definitely a big thing that, the GSAs and Transgender Community Coalition, there's been low parts of my life where, where death seemed like a better option than anything, and with the support of my family and Tommy and just people in the LGBT community from my school and everything, it really does save you sometimes when you're feeling really, really down, And just recently, since, I'm just going to mention this, since Trump's election, I've heard things from coworkers that surprise me, and I'm not out into I'm not open trans to every part of my life, and there's some people at work that, they have no clue, and I'm hearing these remarks from them, and they're saying these things, and it's just like, wow, now I have to feel threatened by you, and I work with you, you're in my life every day, and now I know how you feel about that. And it's really scary, But definitely, since being more involved with all these things, if that happened when I was younger, it would completely, it would start an argument, I would completely lose my temper. It wouldn't be good, but I think sense of the support and everything that I get from my family, my girlfriend, my, the Transgender Community Coalition, everybody, it's calmed me down a lot more, because it's just like the bigger person kind of thing. It's like without them, I feel like I wouldn't be here today, honestly. It really makes a really big impact on your life when you grow up the way that, in these communities like this without anybody. And I think about that all the time. I've met some trans guys and trans women who ask me, if you have a place for hormones, for, where can I get a surgery done? Oh, this and that, and can I just go to a regular therapist? No, you have to go to a certain therapist to get your, to be able to start your hormone replacement therapy. And a lot of them, I ask them, well, what's your insurance? How old are you? Oh, well, how do your parents feel about it? My parents won't let me. Well, they kicked me out, or I don't have a place to stay, or, there's, even at my job, I'll overhear conversations, and I'll tell them, look, it's none of my business, but have you ever thought about hormone treatment? And I'll get into the conversation. I've met probably like 3 to 4 customers who I still talk to till this day, and they, like, 2 of them have started a hormone treatment, everything, because it's just, I'm just a person at the grocery store, but I could be the only person who's providing them the information that they need to start their treatment and everything. So I could be putting myself in threat for that, but I feel like it's a big importance to, put it out there.
It is, and thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So now, I want to sort of use your remaining time. If you have questions, the mic is on. We won't limit you to 2-minute public comment today. Maybe. Actually, less. But if you have a question or a short comment, please come up to the mic. It's not a shy crowd. I know it's a few. Not? Yes, Mr. Sutter.
Can I ask one here?
Yes, you have a loud voice.
Yeah, I'm a former police commissioner for the last 10 years in Los Angeles area. So my question is to our police chief. What sort of impact do you have or will you have with other law enforcement leaders in the Coachella Valley that you can replicate some of the values and goals that we have here in Palm Springs that you as a leader are exhibiting, so that they too have that same level? Because obviously we drive into Cathedral City, we drive sometimes into Indio, and we want to make sure that we too are safe there.
That's a great question. We have Ron DeHart in the crowd here, who's our Pride Parade organizer. And he coordinated with my services captain, Captain Walter Combs, to see what we can do as far as the law enforcement community to get more involved, be more visible, more inclusive. He came up with a great idea for me to write personal letters to area police chiefs, inviting them to our event. And that's exactly what I did. I wrote personal letters to every police chief in the valley to invite them to come over and enjoy the wonderful community that we have and the parade that we put on. I was able to get the Indio Police Chief to attend, the Desert Hot Springs Police Chief to attend, and members of the Cathedral City Police Department. Although it was a small contingent, it was a good start. And after the event, to hear the feedback from the Desert Hot Springs Chief, he said it was one of the most moving experiences that he's ever had in his law enforcement career. He's been in the business for 30 years. So, as a police chief, I don't always have the answers. But when we collaborate with people like Ron DeHart and others, we come up with these ideas. And something as simply as writing a letter, a personal letter to other police chiefs to get them involved, it starts things moving in a better direction for the entire valley.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
One of the things that Maddie Liddon did with Palm Springs Police Department, her and I worked on the sensitivity training for the transgender community. And once Maddie left for her new job, I continued that with the Transgender Community Coalition to help to do sensitivity training at Cathedral City, Indio, Desert Hot Springs, and the Riverside County Sheriff's Department for our region. So we've done sensitivity training to make sure that trans people are accepted and treated with dignity and respect. A lot of the policies state that they have to do a forward call to let them know they have a sensitive detainee if they're detaining someone because of the Prison Rape Elimination Act and other things. So there's a lot of policies that are really coming into effect that a lot of people may not be aware of, but they're diligently, the police departments and sheriff's departments are working behind the scenes trying to keep up with the times and stuff.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan Bronson, and also a member of PFLAG, the extended family of the LGBT community. I'd like to ask Lisa, Tom, Vivian, and Aiden, the Deacon and Aiden, what's one thing that those of us who are allies can do to help this community?
Emulate the work that so many parents like yourself are doing, so that when that child, that's your child, shows that they are transgender, that you embrace them, you tell them you love them, and you give that child the opportunity to grow up to be the man or the woman that they dream of being. And there is nothing more than every parent giving their child the opportunity to be the best human being they can be.
Say something. I agree with that 100% because, you know, my mom, it was kind of set off like, oh, well, we need to find a therapist, and it was kind of uneasy. Well, what kind of therapist do we need? What kind of well, who prescribes hormones and stuff, you know? And the only thing that my mom really could do is just exactly embrace me and tell me, right when I told her I was trans, it was, okay, Aiden, you know, I'm just completely pronouns corrected, name, you know, we're gonna look for this, we're gonna find, you know, who you need to find for you to be happy with yourself. And now I am here today, the happiest I've ever been in life, you know, and my mom's still the same way she is. And now she's raising two of my nephews, and I can tell her, oh, you want a Barbie? Here you go, you know. She's completely awesome, and I think that's really all you really can do is just be 100% for your, you know, for your kids.
I would say be supportive, be visible, and educate. If you do those three things, or anyone does those three things, a lot of people don't understand the whole trans. They don't get it, you know, and that's okay, because most trans people don't get it either. I don't get it half the time. So, you know, it's okay. We're all there. We're all human beings. But I think that if we really focus on those things, and in the next 4 years, I think that's extremely important, because like it just, even with the election, because of my last name, I've gotten nasty messages already and stuff. So I think it's just really important that we do those things, and we really be supportive of one another, and understand that everything is a learning process. And as long as you're honest with trans people and you say, I'm still learning, I think that goes a lot further, because it's their own advocacy. And trans people understand, like myself, just my very existence is advocacy. You know, me going and using the bathroom, me getting my name and gender changed, me getting my birth certificate changed, which they messed up the first time. They named my mother Hitman as a lateral. This from Indiana, it's quite different. But we face a lot of things, and just being there, I think, for the trans community and bringing families to meet them are very important, because you never know what is required to make the person whole. Everyone is on their own journey. Everyone has their own information. And that is why specific people want to ask personal questions. And it's okay, too. But everyone doesn't have this. There's no paintbrush for this is this way or this is that way. We're a very diverse community on different paths. And we have to embrace that as part of being diverse.
I think I'd like to add that
I'm deeply moved that you are in PFLAG with a transgendered son. I wish I had a mom like you. My mother learned a week before she died that I was her transgendered son. And we had a wonderful relationship for 1 week. I waited until the last minute to tell her, and I wish I hadn't. But I am so honored to be in your presence. That you
I'm
love.
just a mom. I'm really just speaking here about allies. Just a mom.
Yeah, but just a mom, you know. Can I tell you how many moms who've thrown their kids out and found out they were gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender? So I think just keep loving that child. Just keep guiding that child. Just keep holding that child. And love them until they can love themselves.
This is going out live, and I was wondering if each of the panelists could provide any websites or contact information or resources for the public audience that you think might benefit them.
We have brochures in the front here. Everybody, please take them so I can get some more copies. And www.transcc.org. We deal with a lot of things from prison advocacy, PREA. We're watching the new jail going in India really closely to make sure LGBT people are protected, healthcare, and we do a wide variety of things to deal with the trans aspect.
We are on YouTube. We are also have our own website, and we'll provide that for you afterwards. The Universal Fellowship of Metropolitan Community Churches also has a website that can get you to the nearest church in your area, get you help. You can call if you're suicidal. We'll help you.
I'll throw out a couple others. So from a legal perspective, nclrights.org. And there's a lot there on the efforts to ban conversion therapy, which targets both the LGBT and the T community, and resources around that. All the state laws I mentioned, you can find it at eqca.org. I should know that website. eqca.org. There are a lot of resources there. A lot of the federal issues we talked about, you can find at hrc.org. And links there about a lot of the work that they're doing, and also about some of the threats right now. They've already updated their website. I got some of my information from there today. And those are all good resources. And the LGBT Center here, this website I don't know by heart.
thecenterps.org.
Thank you. Because there are support groups and a lot of opportunity there for people to engage. So there are a lot of other organizations, but those are just some I thought we should throw out. So thank you for that. Yes, please.
May I?
Yeah. All right.
Hi, everyone. How are you tonight?
Good.
My name is Willa. I just came from Los Angeles, just enjoying you guys. I'm really excited to be here. And I'm so proud that you guys are doing this kind of events because it makes me feel comfortable, makes me feel proud. And I'm just trying to get involved in this community because I'm a trans mom too. I have 2 kids, teenagers actually. I adopted them when they were born. I'm so proud of that. And I also here because I want to get involved in this big thing that you guys are doing about, to get the trans community in the workforce. I'm actually a waitress. I work in LA. I feel the need to work for my kids hard, give them a good example, and grow them up. But at the same time, I just want to support the community, showing to the world that trans women can work and can afford something to the community and the world too. And I'm trying to show up to the world what we can do. And well, unfortunately, I'm just like in work now because I fell down at work. But I'm so excited to get back to work. At the same time, I just would like to get involved in this movement. I just want to be part of it. And well, you guys help me out. I can be more involved in this situation.
Sure, and after I think, talking to Tommy, who's here, and Allison, who's at the end in the first row, who's in Raleigh, California, and they're based in Los Angeles, I think would be really good connections to get involved.
Sounds great, because by the way, I'm just looking for another part-time job. It would be great.
I can help you with that. Good at it. And we have a lot of trans families here, so if you want support with your children, I can connect you with them as well.
That will be great.
Yeah.
Because it's hard for me just being a single mom and just having two teenagers. It's hard sometimes. But thank you so much for letting me share my story.
No, please.
And thank you so much for listening to me, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Armando Benitez Escobedo, and I am the founder and director of the IE Trans Project based in Corona. And one of the things that I do in the community is, I live in a very conservative community, which is Corona and Loco. A lot of work to do out there. But one of the things that I find when I do any type of advocacy for trans individuals is that because, by the way, I'm a business owner, so I've been in business for 10 years. Because of the work that I've already done in the business community, when I go and talk about trans issues, people may not be able to support it or don't want to support it in our community, but they're respectful enough to listen. And my thing is that if you can't get a job, start your own business. That's the whole reason why I started my business. I'm disabled myself, so I decided to start my business 10 years ago. And because of that, I've been able to grow a lot of community connections. How do you feel about empowering the trans community to start their own business? And how would you go about that to provide those resources?
So, have you worked on helping people start their own business, Tommy? I know you've helped people sort of get jobs, so maybe that's a good question for you.
I think, it's just like cisgender people. Some people are meant to work for others. Other people are meant to start their own businesses. And, it's just you got to find your skill and your talent and your passion. And, I think it's important. Here we actually have quite a few. We have people have cleaning services, pastries, do those, gardening, and janitorials. I have quite a few of them that do various things like that want to work for themselves for flexible hours. As far as the government, as far as conservative, I believe there's a new electee out there in Corona. It's a lesbian.
Yeah, by the way, I forgot to say, we have the first Latina lesbian assembly woman for Corona and Loco, which is huge.
But yeah, she's fabulous. So I think the biggest thing that when we come to that aspect that I hear is that there's a level of just wanting to give people dignity and respect. But most government officials are extremely busy. It's a lot of bureaucracy dealing with things, and just going there and discussing things and having that advocacy and making a voice for yourself and is very important, because it's a lot of times I just forget. They go, oh, we never thought of that. I can't imagine how many times I've had someone tell me that. Like, oh, we never thought of that. I'm like, oh yeah. So I think that just doing those things and seeing that opportunity that they treat people with dignity and respect is a doorway that is opening.
I commend the Transgender Community Coalition for the outstanding leadership in building new leaders. Prior to starting this organization, I was the interim executive director for the Riverside Transgender Coalition 6 months ago, and I served as a 6-month assignment. And Tommy has been embracing and just wonderful to work with. And that's the kind of leadership we need in the trans community, is to continue to build more leaders, because I believe our movement is going to continue to grow. So, thank you.
Don't get it wrong, I want to sleep. That's why.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then I think we'll finish it up. Just going a little
Hi, I'm Michaela Mendelson, and I have to say I was a little naive about what goes on here in the desert community. I'm from Los Angeles, originally from New York. I came out here about a month ago for the banquet and got the pleasure of hearing Lisa and Jeff speak, and started to get an idea, and then had breakfast with Lisa the next morning and started to get an idea of what goes on out here. And tonight I'm just overwhelmed. This is like a model community that I want to bring back with me in my heart to wherever I go. To see people of worship, police force, the Chamber of Commerce and Hospital, what Tomi does here with her community and political. I mean, I see all members of the community working together to do something just so amazing. I'm here with Allison from Equality California because we're working together on a transgender workforce project. I have a contract with the California Restaurant Association, which I've been involved with for 14 years, and after doing it in my restaurants for 4 years, hiring transgender people, I realized this can work in all restaurants. And restaurants throughout the state employ 1.7 million people and serve 30 million customers who can change their hearts and minds. I'm also on the board of directors for the Trevor Project, and I want to speak about the mother who got up here and spoke about supporting her child. At the Trevor Project right now, if those who don't know what that is, we work to reduce the risk of suicide in LGBT youth throughout the country. And in fact, now we've had Mexico reach out to us, and I'm going to be meeting in a couple of days with someone from their State Department, helping them start the same service down in Mexico. And our call center is off the hook right now. Since the election, the calls have gone up astronomically, high anxiety. Our counselors and volunteers work 24 hours, helping each other get through it, helping all these people who need help. It's elevated the needs so much. And I've got to say that parents who support their children are my heroes. And I know you came here just as a parent and not meaning to be a hero to us, but you are a hero. Because when I speak in schools, I talk about the fact that kids that aren't supported by their parents are 8 times more likely to commit suicide. And that the young people in this country someday will be raising their own children, and they should know what it means to them, and the peers should know what it means to each other to support each other. And I just want to thank all of you for what I'm seeing here today, and I hope to get to know each of you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Just want to sort of wrap up, and I really want to follow up on that a little bit, because I do think for all of us, especially for allies, this is a challenging time right now, and the need to reach out and be supportive, to be available, to make the extra effort to support people both in the transgender community but other communities that right now feel targeted is really important, probably more than ever, because people do feel vulnerable, and the way you don't feel vulnerable is through community. And that's, I think, on each of us to do that extra step to build community and be supportive and be there for each other is just really important right now. And with that, I really want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank this amazing panel for all And now, of course, we're moving. So everyone's invited to go to 849, where there's going to be sort of a celebration and chance for people to talk to one another. They're going to have some appetizers out, and I hope everyone can join us. So thanks again for being here.
If you're watching live, that's 849 Lesbian. So there you have it, another compelling episode of promohomo.tv, evidence of what can be done with new technology. Without this technology, a panel like this would not have been made available live to a worldwide audience in a way that's preservable and shareable. And as usual, check out promohomo.tv for more compelling programming.